The Ascension is the enthronement of wounded love over the universe. The hands that now rule heaven are the hands pierced on Calvary. That means the final word over history will not be violence, hatred, or war, but love.
मूलं समीक्ष्य यत्र गम्यताः सर्वेषां मार्गं तथैव प्रवृत्ति.
Sisters and brothers, hearty welcome to all of you to the solemnity of the Ascension of the Lord. In the year 1968, the world was shocked by a terrible tragedy. During a campaign speech in Los Angeles, Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. The nation was already bleeding from racial violence, war, and the recent assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Fear and hopelessness filled the hearts of many Americans. A few days later, during the funeral journey, something unforgettable happened. As the train carrying Kennedy's body passed through towns and villages, thousands of ordinary people stood silently along the railway tracks. Some removed their hats, some saluted, some knelt, some held their children close. Many were weeping. They were not merely mourning a man, they were mourning the loss of hope itself. Years later, observers said that what moved them most was not the death, but the faces of those people waiting beside the tracks. In the middle of social chaos and uncertainty, they were still searching for someone or something to believe in. Humanity cannot live without hope. When people lose hope in the future, society begins to collapse inwardly. Yes, my sisters and brothers, the solemnity of the Ascension speaks directly into such a world. It tells humanity that history is not abandoned, that suffering does not have the final word, and that our future is not emptiness, but communion with God. The Ascension is the feast of hope for a world standing beside the tracks of uncertainty, waiting for light beyond darkness. Today, we live in a world exhausted by wars, violence, confusion, loneliness, depression, and loss of direction. Entire generations are growing up with information in their hands, but emptiness in their hearts. Many people no longer know where life is going. Humanity has become technologically advanced, but spiritually homeless. In such a world, the Ascension becomes not merely a doctrine, but a proclamation of hope. In today's gospel, the disciples went to the mountain in Galilee, where Jesus had directed them. Mountains in the Bible are places of revelation and transformation. Moses encountered God on the mountain. Elijah heard the gentle whisper on the mountain. Jesus was transfigured on the mountain. And now, on another mountain, the risen Lord reveals the final horizon of human life. Biblically, the word worship literally means to bow down, to fall before, or to surrender oneself. In the Bible, worship is never simply singing hymns or reciting prayers. Worship means recognizing who truly stands at the center of one's life. It is the moment when a person stops making himself the center and allows God to take his rightful place. This becomes very significant in the context of the Gospel of Matthew. Throughout the gospel, different people worship Jesus. The Magi worship the child Jesus. The disciples worship him after he calms the storm. The Canaanite woman kneels before him. And finally, after the resurrection, the disciples worship him on the mountain. Matthew is gradually revealing that Jesus is not merely a teacher or a prophet. He is the Lord worthy of worship. But notice something important. The disciples worship him after the resurrection. Before this, they had often followed Jesus with misunderstanding, fear, ambition, and confusion. They argued about who was greatest. They fled during his passion. Peter denied him. Their faith was weak and incomplete. Yet, when they encounter the risen Lord, something changes profoundly. Worship is born from encounter. True worship always begins when a person experiences that Christ is alive, victorious, and present even in brokenness. There is another striking detail in the same verse. When they saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. Matthew deliberately keeps worship and doubt side by side. This is extraordinarily comforting for modern believers. The disciples are not perfect saints standing on the mountain with complete certainty. Some are still struggling interiorly, yet they worship. This teaches us that worship is not the reward of perfect faith. Worship is the path through which faith grows. Many people think they must first solve all doubts before approaching God. But the gospel shows the opposite. The disciples bring even their confusion into the presence of Christ. Today, my sisters and brothers, many people see countless things but worship nothing worthy. Society worships success, beauty, money, popularity, power, technology, or self-image. Whatever occupies the deepest space of our heart eventually becomes our God. Worship is not only what we do in church. Worship is what we give our ultimate attention, trust, and dependence to. That is why modern humanity is spiritually exhausted. Technology cannot heal loneliness. When temporary things become ultimate things, the human heart becomes restless. There is also a beautiful symbolic meaning in the setting. The disciples worshiped Jesus on a mountain in Galilee. Galilee was not Jerusalem, the religious center. It was an ordinary, mixed, imperfect place. This means Christ reveals himself not only in holy spaces, but also in ordinary human life situations. Worship is not confined to sanctuaries. It must enter homes, workplaces, classrooms, hospitals, streets, and wounded hearts. In a practical sense, every Eucharist continues this moment of Matthew 28. We come like the disciples, some believing strongly, some wounded, some distracted, some struggling with doubts, fears, sins, and unanswered questions. Yet, we stand before the risen Christ, and slowly, through encounter, worship transforms us. Then comes the magnificent declaration of Jesus. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. This is not the authority of dictators who dominate through fear. This is the authority of crucified love. Sisters and brothers, the Ascension is the enthronement of wounded love over the universe. The hands that now rule heaven are the hands pierced on Calvary. That means the final word over history will not be violence, hatred, or war, but love. This is why Acts of the Apostles presents the Ascension not as a farewell soaked in sadness, but as the beginning of mission. The disciples stand gazing into heaven, and the angels ask them, "Why do you stand looking up toward heaven?" Christianity is never escapism. The Ascension does not remove us from earthly responsibility, it deepens it. Jesus ascends, but the disciples must descend into the wounded realities of the world. They must return to Jerusalem, the city of fear, conflict, and uncertainty, and become witnesses there. There is a profound spiritual truth here. Many people today are looking endlessly toward heaven while ignoring the suffering beside them. But true Christianity does not flee from the world, because Christ has ascended. Every human struggle now carries eternal dignity. Heaven has touched earth forever. Sisters and brothers, the Ascension means that humanity now has a place in God. Jesus did not ascend merely as an individual. He ascended carrying human nature itself into the heart of the Father. As the early church fathers beautifully said, "Where the head has gone, the body hopes to follow." That's why St. Paul, in the second reading through the epistle to the Ephesians, prays that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, so that you may know the hope to which He has called you. Christianity begins not with fear, but with vision. Paul is praying that believers may see beyond present darkness. Many eyes today are open, but hearts are blind. We see screens all day, but we no longer see meaning. We know the price of things, but not their value. We have connections everywhere, but communion nowhere. The Ascension heals this blindness by lifting our eyes toward eternity. There's a deeply moving story from the life of Mother Teresa. One evening in Calcutta, she picked up a dying man from the street whose body was covered with wounds and insects. As she cleaned him, the man looked at her and said, "I lived like an animal on the street, but I am going to die like an angel, loved and cared for." He died shortly afterwards with peace on his face. What changed that man? Not medicine, not wealth. It was the rediscovery of dignity and hope. The disciples in the Ascension experience something similar. They no longer live imprisoned with an immediate fear because they have seen the risen Lord. A person who has seen eternity cannot live as a slave to despair. The tragedy of modern humanity is not merely suffering, it is loss of horizon. When people lose the future, they lose themselves. That is why so many young people today drift through anxiety, addictions, distractions, and inner emptiness. They are surrounded by noise but starving for meaning. The Ascension restores direction. Human history is not wandering aimlessly. Human beings are not abandoned. Christ has gone ahead of us. Amen.
समीक्ष्य यत्र गम्यता सर्वेषां मार्गः तथैव प्रवृत्तिः